My family demanded I hand over my condo to my gold-digging sister and her rich fiancé, called me selfish when I refused. Then the front door opened, a lawyer walked in, and everything they thought they controlled began to collapse. I, 28 male, live in Phoenix, pulling in $92,000 annually, which sounds impressive until you hear about my family situation that would make reality TV producers weep with joy. Meet my cast of characters. Parents Robert and Linda, classic boomers who believe family means you owe them your paycheck forever, and my sister Jessica, 25, the most entitled human to ever grace this planet. I'm talking designer handbags worth more than most people's rent, weekly nail appointments costing hundreds, and a life philosophy of dating significantly older men with fat wallets. Jessica dropped out of community college after one semester because education is for people who can't figure out easier ways to make money. Brilliant, right? She failed basic math twice but discovered her true calling, systematically draining wealthy older boyfriends with the precision of a professional con artist. My parents not only encouraged this behavior, they bragged about how Jessica knows how to work the system. Meanwhile, I was the reliable workhorse who existed solely to solve everyone's financial emergencies. Classic golden child versus scapegoat dynamic that psychologists write case studies about. Every time Jessica needed money for rent, shopping sprees, or cosmetic procedures, guess who got the emotional manipulation about helping family and sticking together through thick and thin? The breaking point came when Jessica crashed Dad's pickup while texting and driving. No insurance because she'd let it lapse to buy a designer purse. And somehow, the family decided I should contribute to repair costs because that's what real families do. That moment made me realize I had to escape before this toxic situation destroyed my financial future and mental health. I worked 3 solid years of 60-hour weeks, took weekend contracting jobs, and lived like a hermit monk to save $38,000 for a down payment. Ramen noodles for dinner, 15-year-old car with no AC, 0 luxuries, pure determination. Finally found a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in Scottsdale for $275,000. Granite countertops, stainless appliances, mountain views, and most importantly, completely mine with my name on the deed. Moving out was the best day of my life. No more midnight drama about Jessica's latest crisis. No more guilt trips. No more watching my money disappear into other people's problems. For 4 peaceful months, I lived in paradise. Just me, my PlayStation, leftover pizza, and complete freedom. Pure blissful independence I'd never experienced. Then my college buddy Jake moved in as my roommate, making everything even better. Jake's this hilarious guy I went to trade school with. 6'4", built like a professional wrestler, but with the wit of a stand-up comedian. He could make a tax audit entertaining. He's incredibly loyal, works as an electrician, splits utilities, and we established the perfect bachelor pad routine. Poker nights, weekend football, grilling on the balcony. Everything was absolutely perfect, until I received the phone call that completely destroyed everything. It was a Thursday evening around 7:30 when Mom called completely out of nowhere. I was sprawled comfortably on my leather couch playing video games with Jake when her name suddenly appeared on my phone screen. I actually stared at it for several long seconds, because we hadn't spoken even once since I moved out 4 months earlier. Complete radio silence from the entire family, which had honestly been a relief. Jake immediately noticed me hesitating and paused our game mid-action. "Uh-oh. Incoming family drama alert," he said in this perfectly dramatic movie trailer voice. The guy seriously had supernatural timing with his comedy routines. "Hopefully not," I muttered, while very reluctantly answering the call, already feeling my stomach tighten with anxiety. Mom's voice was absolutely ice-cold and strictly business. "No, how have you been lately? No, we miss having you around the house. No, how's your new place?" Just straight to her obvious agenda without any pleasantries. "Ryan, we need you here for dinner this Sunday. 6 o'clock exactly. Don't be late." Something about her commanding authoritative tone made my stomach immediately drop with dread. This wasn't a casual invitation, it was a summon. "What's this about, Mom? Why now after all this time? We'll explain absolutely everything when you arrive. Don't be late and don't bring anyone with you. This is family business." She hung up without even saying goodbye or allowing any discussion or questions. Jake stared at me with raised eyebrows and immediately started doing this exaggerated dramatic voice. "Oh no. The ancient family council has officially summoned young Ryan back to the ancestral stronghold of dysfunction. What terrible fate awaits our completely unsuspecting hero?" I couldn't help laughing despite the seriously uneasy feeling growing steadily in my chest. "Cut it out, man. It's probably nothing too serious, bro. In my extensive experience dealing with dysfunctional families, and trust me, I've seen some doozies. When parents suddenly called demanding emergency dinner meetings after months of complete silence, somebody's definitely about to get absolutely screwed over, Jake said, while unpausing our game. Just saying. You might want to prepare yourself mentally for whatever nightmare they're planning. You really think it's that bad, dude? They've ignored you for 4 months now. Suddenly they need you for a family dinner. That's not reconciliation talk. That's manipulation setup. Mark my words. They want something from you. The entire weekend felt unusually long and increasingly stressful. I kept obsessively replaying that weird phone call in Mom's strange authoritative tone. Her voice had this calculated quality that made me nervous. Part of me actually wondered if maybe they'd finally realized how badly they'd been treating me and wanted to make genuine amends. Yeah, I know exactly how incredibly naive that sounds now. Saturday dragged by slowly. I tried distracting myself with normal activities. Hit the gym, did some shopping, worked on a home improvement project, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming. Jake kept making jokes about it, but I could tell he was genuinely concerned too. Sunday eventually arrived, and I decided to make a sincere effort at reconciliation despite my reservations. I stopped by the expensive grocery store and bought premium ingredients to make Mom's absolute favorite dessert. Homemade apple pie completely from scratch, with real butter, fresh Granny Smith apples, and the special cinnamon blend she always raved about. Spent nearly 3 hours that afternoon baking it absolutely perfectly, thinking maybe this thoughtful gesture would help smooth over whatever awkwardness existed between us. The whole apartment smelled amazing, and I felt genuinely good about making the effort. Jake offered to come along for moral support, but I figured this was probably just normal family business that needed to be handled privately. All right, he said seriously while I was getting ready to leave. But I'm keeping my phone on maximum volume. Text me pineapple if you need emergency backup extraction. Why pineapple specifically? Secret code word, bro. Trust me completely. You're definitely going to need one before this night ends. I've got a bad feeling about this whole situation. Looking back now, he was absolutely right about everything. I arrived at 6 p.m., carrying my carefully prepared homemade apple pie, desperately trying to maintain optimism despite Jake's warnings. When Mom opened the door, something felt immediately wrong. She looked at me like an unwelcome business associate rather than her son. Her smile was fake and forced. No comment on the pie I'd spent hours making. No hug. Just weird formal politeness that set off alarm bells. Walking back into that house felt surreal. Everything appeared physically the same furniture, decorations, family photos, but the emotional atmosphere was completely different. It felt like entering a courtroom rather than a family home. Jessica sat primly at the dining table wearing an obviously expensive black cocktail dress. Makeup done professionally like she was attending a formal event. Next to her sat this much older guy in an expensive tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Had to be at least 45. Obvious receding hairline hidden by an expensive haircut, giant gold Rolex glinting on his wrist, and this air of smug superiority that immediately rubbed me wrong. Clearly another wealthy older boyfriend. But this one seemed different, more polished, more calculating. Ryan, meet Brad, Mom announced formally, like introducing business associates. Jessica's fiancé. Fiancé? I'd been gone exactly 4 months and suddenly she's engaged to some random guy. The timeline seemed impossibly fast, even for Jessica. Brad immediately stood up and extended this overly firm businessman handshake while examining me like a potential investment opportunity. His grip was deliberately too strong. Eye contact too long. Classic dominance games. Great to finally meet you, Ryan. Jessica shared so many wonderful stories about you and your construction work. The way he said construction work made it sound like I picked up garbage for a living. This guy was already establishing hierarchy. The dinner setup was elaborate, expensive ribeye steaks, lobster tails, fancy sides, premium everything on our best china. Someone had dropped serious money on this meal, and I was confident it wasn't my parents. This was Brad showing off. We spent 20 awkward minutes on forced small talk. Brad constantly bragged about his various successful business ventures and diversifying his impressive investment portfolio. He name-dropped expensive restaurants, luxury destinations, and business connections, like reading from a resume. Jessica just smiled constantly, repeatedly showing off her massive engagement ring that caught light from every angle. The thing was absolutely huge, probably cost more than my annual salary. She kept positioning her hand strategically so the ring was always visible. Mom and Dad hung on Brad's every word like he was a celebrity, asking questions about his business success and nodding approvingly. I'd never seen them show this much interest in anyone's career, certainly not mine. Then Dad cleared his throat and the real agenda emerged. "Ryan, we invited you here because our family's going through major life changes," he began carefully, like delivering a rehearsed speech. "Jessica and Brad are getting married next month, and they need somewhere comfortable while they search for their dream home." My stomach sank. "Okay. And what does that have to do with me?" "Brad's currently between properties," Mom explained smoothly, clearly having practiced this. "His lease is ending and his house purchase got delayed. Your condo would be perfect for them temporarily." The room went dead silent, except for my heart pounding. I looked around desperately, hoping this was an elaborate joke. "You want me to give up my condo?" I asked slowly. "Not permanently," Jessica said with that sickeningly fake sweet voice she used for manipulation. "Just let us stay there a few months while we house hunt, maybe 6 months maximum. You don't need all that space anyway, you're just one person." Brad nodded enthusiastically. "I'd naturally cover utilities and maintenance costs. We're not asking for free charity. I believe in fair business arrangements." "Cover utilities on a place where I'm paying $1,750 monthly mortgage plus HOA fees." This guy thought $60 for electricity was generous compensation for my home. "Absolutely not happening," I said firmly. The temperature dropped 30 degrees. Jessica's artificial smile vanished, replaced by that cold, calculating look I'd seen before. "Excuse me?" she said with shock and indignation. I said absolutely no way. I worked incredibly hard for that place. "I'm not giving it up so you can play house with your sugar daddy." Jessica's true personality emerged. She slammed her palm on the table, making glasses jump and spilling water everywhere. "Sugar daddy, how dare you? He's a successful businessman who understands family loyalty, unlike certain selfish people." "Jessica, please calm down," Dad said weakly. But she was just warming up. "I cannot believe how selfish you're being. We're asking for one simple favor, and you're acting like we want your vital organs. This is exactly why I knew you'd be difficult." "A simple favor?" I laughed bitterly. "You want me to move out so you can live rent-free with some guy you've known 3 months?" Brad's tone became ice cold. "Young man, you're forgetting something important. Family members take care of each other unconditionally. Your sister found genuine happiness, and a real man would support that completely. A real man. This fossil was questioning my manhood because I wouldn't hand over my keys." "Here's what's happening," Dad said, standing threateningly. "You're giving Jessica and Brad the keys immediately and moving back home until they buy their house. This family gave you everything. Time to give back. Like hell I am." Mom's voice became shrill. "You lived under our roof for 25 years. We fed you, clothed you, sacrificed for you. Now give back to the family that raised you." Then Jessica went for the kill. "You know your real problem, Ryan? You're pathetically jealous. Jealous that I found someone who can provide while you're stuck in your boring construction job, living like a pathetic college student. You can't stand that I'm successful." The room erupted. Dad screamed about respect and obligations. Mom sobbed about disappointment. Jessica shrieked about ruining her wedding plans. And Brad sat there with an incredibly smug smile, genuinely enjoying the chaos, probably taking mental notes for future manipulation. That's when I heard the front door opening unexpectedly, cutting through all the shouting. "What in blazes is happening in here?" Everyone instantly froze like statues caught in the middle of committing a crime. Standing in the doorway was my grandfather, Thomas, looking like he just stepped off a military parade ground. The man's 74 years old, but still built like he could bench press a truck single-handedly and has this commanding presence that fills any room he enters. He'd driven down from Flagstaff for a completely surprise visit, which he occasionally did when he got worried about family dynamics. Perfect timing didn't even begin to describe this moment. Right behind him stood Jake, grinning widely and clearly enjoying the dramatic entrance. "Sorry, bro," Jake said cheerfully while surveying the chaos. "I was driving by randomly and saw Grandpa Tom's pickup truck parked outside. Figured I'd stop by to say hello and make sure your family hadn't actually murdered you yet." I could have hugged him right there on the spot. Jake had this supernatural ability to appear at exactly the right moment when things were going south. And seeing his massive 6'4" frame filling the doorway made me feel significantly less outnumbered in hostile territory. Grandpa's sharp eyes slowly scanned the entire room, taking in the expensive dinner spread, everyone's fancy clothes, the obvious tension in the air, and me sitting there looking like I'd been through an emotional blender. Nothing escaped his attention. The man had decades of military experience reading situations quickly. "Ryan, you doing all right there, son?" he asked with genuine concern in his voice. Before I could respond, Dad immediately jumped in with his carefully prepared version of events, clearly trying to control the narrative before I could speak. How I was being completely disrespectful to family. How I was selfishly refusing to help family members in desperate need. How I was being totally unreasonable about my little apartment situation when they were asking for such a small favor. Jessica added her dramatic contribution about how I was intentionally ruining her happiness and being jealous of her incredible success with Brad. She put on her best victim performance, complete with teary eyes and trembling voice. Brad attempted to smooth everything over with some corporate nonsense about family unity and making necessary sacrifices for the greater good of everyone. He introduced himself as Jessica's fiancé and explained how they just needed temporary housing while searching for their dream home. Grandpa listened to absolutely all of it without saying a single word or changing his stern expression. He just stood there like a statue, taking in every detail and letting everyone finish their performances. When the room finally went quiet, he looked directly at me. "Ryan, tell me exactly what they asked you to do. Don't leave anything out." So I explained everything honestly and completely. The outrageous demand for my condo, the expectation that I'd move back home and give up my independence, all the guilt trips about owing the family some kind of massive debt for raising me, the manipulation tactics they'd been using. Jake was standing behind Grandpa making these exaggerated, shocked facial expressions, like he was watching the most dramatic soap opera episode ever filmed. Despite the tension, I had to suppress a smile at his antics. When I finished explaining everything, Grandpa stayed quiet for a very long moment, processing all the information. Then he looked around the table at everyone with this expression I'd never seen before. "Robert, did you contribute any money toward Ryan's condo purchase?" "Well, no, but that's not the important point here. Linda, did you help with his down payment at all? That's completely beside the point in this situation. Jessica, did you sacrifice anything whatsoever to help your brother achieve his goals?" Jessica's face was turning bright red with anger. "He's family. He should want to help me succeed. That's what families do." Grandpa nodded slowly and thoughtfully, like he was putting together pieces of a puzzle. Then he turned toward Brad with laser focus. "And you, sir, what exactly do you bring to this particular equation besides demands?" Brad puffed out his chest importantly and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. "I'm offering to marry into this family and provide long-term stability for Jessica. I believe that's worth some serious consideration and respect. I'm successful, financially stable, and committed to taking care of your granddaughter." Jake made a barely suppressed snorting sound behind his hand, clearly unimpressed by Brad's presentation. Grandpa stared at Brad for what felt like forever, and I could practically see him analyzing every detail. "You know what I think? I think you're a middle-aged man who specifically targets young women and believes money gives him the right to make demands of their families." The room went absolutely dead silent, except for the sound of everyone's shocked breathing. "Now here's exactly what's going to happen," Grandpa continued, his voice staying calm, but carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who commanded troops in Vietnam and wasn't impressed by corporate peacocks. "Ryan earned his home through his own honest hard work and sacrifice. Anyone who thinks they can guilt him into giving it up can go pound sand." Jessica gasped dramatically like she'd been physically slapped. "Grandpa, I'm not finished talking yet, young lady." "Robert, Linda, I'm genuinely ashamed of how you've raised this girl to think the world owes her everything. And you?" He pointed directly at Brad with obvious disgust. "You can take your business ventures and your investment portfolio and shove them somewhere very unpleasant." Jake was practically vibrating with suppressed laughter at this point, clearly enjoying every second of Grandpa's speech. But Grandpa still wasn't finished delivering his verdict. "This house has been in our family for 42 years. I put Robert's name on the deed when he got married because I thought he'd learned responsibility and good judgment by then. Clearly, I was completely wrong about that assumption." He pulled out his cell phone and hit speed dial while everyone watched in stunned silence. "My lawyer, it's Tom. I need you to bring those papers we discussed last month." "Yes, tonight." "No, this absolutely cannot wait until tomorrow morning. It's time." He hung up and stared at my parents intensely with disappointment written all over his face. "You've got exactly 1 hour to decide what's more important to you, your son's well-being or your daughter's greed. Choose very wisely because this decision is permanent." My grandfather's lawyer showed up exactly 1 hour later, carrying a professional briefcase full of official legal documents. Turns out Grandpa had been planning this intervention for several months, ever since he'd learned through family friends about how my parents had been treating me after I moved out. The paperwork was absolutely beautiful in its legal simplicity and effectiveness. Since Grandpa technically still owned the house, he'd only added Dad's name to the deed years ago for tax purposes, but retained primary ownership. He could transfer complete ownership anytime he wanted, and tonight, he wanted to transfer everything directly to me. But here's the really brilliant part that showed Grandpa's strategic thinking. If my parents wanted to legally contest this decision, they'd have to pay back 42 years of property taxes, maintenance costs, utilities, insurance, and major improvements that Grandpa had funded. We're talking about approximately $190,000 in total, documented expenses with receipts and records. The lawyers spread out all the documentation on the dining room table while everyone watched in stunned silence. Property deeds, tax records, expense receipts, and a new ownership transfer document that just needed signatures. Jessica completely lost her mind when she realized what was happening. She started screaming about how this wasn't fair, how she deserved something valuable for being the daughter, how I was obviously manipulating Grandpa against the rest of the family with lies and fake sob stories. This is ridiculous. I'm his granddaughter too. Why does Ryan get everything just because he's male? This is discrimination. Brad tried playing mediator, clearly seeing his meal ticket disappearing before his eyes. He suggested we could work out some kind of arrangement like the corporate shark he obviously was. Maybe Jessica and I could share ownership responsibilities of both properties somehow, or create some kind of family trust arrangement. Jake was just standing in the corner eating leftover apple pie and watching the chaos unfold like it was premium entertainment television. He kept making subtle hand gestures to me, clearly enjoying the family meltdown. That's when Grandpa revealed his real bombshell that nobody saw coming. Oh, I almost forgot something very important. My lawyer, show them those other documents we prepared specifically for tonight. The lawyer pulled out another thick folder from his briefcase. Turns out Grandpa had been conducting some serious professional investigation into Brad's business ventures through contacts he still had from his military days. The guy was drowning in debt from multiple failed business ventures, facing several lawsuits from previous business partners who accused him of fraud, and his fancy Rolex was completely fake. Bought from some online knockoff website for about $50. Your fiancé is broke, Jessica. Worse than broke, he's actively being pursued by creditors and former business partners. He's using you to try gaining access to property he can flip for quick cash to pay his debts. The lawyer laid out bank statements showing negative balances, court documents detailing multiple lawsuits, credit reports showing destroyed credit scores, and even receipts proving the watch was fake. It was like watching someone's entire life get exposed as a carefully constructed lie. The man Jessica thought was her golden ticket to easy street and luxury lifestyle was actually desperately looking for his own financial rescue and saw her family's property as his salvation. You're all lying, this is fake. Brad would never lie to me, Jessica shrieked hysterically, clearly having a mental breakdown as her fantasy crumbled. Brad loves me genuinely. Tell them the truth. Show them your real bank statements. But Brad was already heading straight for the front door, probably calculating how quickly he could disappear before anyone started asking more difficult questions. This is way too much drama for me, babe. Call me when you get your head straightened out and your family stops being crazy. And just like that, he vanished completely into the night. Left Jessica sitting there in her expensive dress with her fake engagement ring, finally realizing she'd destroyed her family relationships for a man who just abandoned her the exact second things got complicated. Jake started a slow, sarcastic clap while grinning widely. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2023 Academy Award for Best Family Drama goes to... Even I had to laugh at that perfect timing and commentary. After Brad disappeared like the coward he was, Jessica completely and utterly unraveled in spectacular fashion. I'm talking about a full psychological breakdown, screaming, sobbing uncontrollably, throwing anything she could grab with violent rage. She picked up one of Mom's expensive decorative plates and hurled it against the wall with all her strength, shattering it completely and leaving ceramic shards everywhere. This is all your fault, she screamed directly at me with pure hatred in her eyes. You deliberately ruined everything. You planned this. You turned Grandpa against me. I hate you. I hate this entire family. Mom was desperately trying to calm her down, but Jessica was way beyond any reasoning or logic. She was ranting about how she'd never find another man like Brad, how she was going to end up alone forever, how we'd all pay dearly for destroying her happiness and ruining her future. Dad just sat there looking completely defeated and confused. I think reality was finally hitting him. His precious princess wasn't the innocent victim he'd always believed her to be. And maybe his golden child wasn't so golden after all. That's when Jessica made her biggest strategic mistake that revealed her true character. Fine. If you want to be selfish, Ryan, then I'll show you what real selfish behavior looks like. I'm taking everything valuable I can from this house and selling all of it. The jewelry Mom gave me, the electronics, Dad's expensive tools, everything I can carry, all of it. She stormed upstairs like a tornado, and we could hear her absolutely ransacking her bedroom, throwing stuff into garbage bags, slamming drawers, and clearly having a complete mental breakdown. Grandpa looked at his lawyer questioningly. I don't suppose we can legally stop her from taking her own personal belongings. Unfortunately, not if they legitimately belong to her. But if she takes anything that doesn't specifically belong to her, that becomes theft and we can pursue criminal charges. 20 minutes later, Jessica came back downstairs dragging 3 large garbage bags full of stolen items, plus carrying boxes of electronics and valuable items that clearly didn't belong to her. I could clearly see Dad's expensive drill set and power tools sticking out of one bag and Mom's jewelry box tucked under her arm along with the good silverware. Jessica, put that stuff back immediately, Dad said weakly, finally realizing what was happening. That's not yours to take. Make me, she snarled viciously like a wild animal. You chose him over me, so now you get to live with all the consequences. I'm taking what I deserve after 25 years of being part of this family. She started loading her car with the stolen goods, while we all watched in shock. That's when Jake decided to step in with perfect timing. Hey Ryan, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear clearly. Isn't that your old PlayStation in her bag? The one you let her borrow last year when her boyfriend wanted to play games? It absolutely was. My PlayStation 5 that I'd loaned her months ago and never gotten back, which she'd claimed was broken and couldn't be returned. Yeah, that's definitely mine. I have the receipt and the serial number registered to my account. Well, then technically she's stealing your personal property. That's a felony in Arizona if it's worth over $1,000. Jessica froze completely like a deer in headlights. It's not stealing. He gave it to me permanently. It was a gift. I loaned it to you temporarily when you asked to borrow it. There's a huge legal difference between borrowing and receiving a gift. The lawyer cleared his throat professionally. I should mention that I'm legally obligated to report any felonies I witness during official proceedings. Theft of property worth over $1,000 is indeed a felony in Arizona. Jessica's face went through about 6 different expressions: confusion, anger, fear, desperation, before she angrily threw my PlayStation on the concrete driveway as hard as she could, completely cracking the case and probably destroying the internal components. Happy now. Take your stupid broken PlayStation. Jake calmly walked over and picked up my destroyed console, examining the damage. Destruction of property, also a felony under Arizona law, especially when done intentionally in front of witnesses. That's when Jessica really lost her mind completely and showed her true colors. She jumped in her car and started peeling out of the driveway like a maniac, tires screeching and leaving black marks on the concrete, but not before rolling down her window to scream one final threat. You'll all regret this decision for the rest of your lives. I'm never coming back. Don't come crying to me when you desperately need help. You're all dead to me. Her car disappeared down the street with dramatic flair, taking with it 25 years of accumulated family drama and manipulation. Jake looked at the fresh tire marks on the concrete driveway and the broken pieces of my PlayStation. Well, that was incredibly therapeutic to witness. Best dinner theater I've seen in years. Life became absolutely amazing for the next year and a half. I got to keep both properties, the family house and my condo. I rented out the condo for $2,100 a month to a nice young couple and moved back into the family house with Grandpa. Jake moved in too, and the 3 of us created the most entertaining and functional household you could imagine. Grandpa taught us proper property maintenance, home repair skills, and investment strategies. Jake handled most of the cooking surprisingly well, actually, since he'd learned from his Italian grandmother. And I managed all the technical repairs and improvements. We established this perfect routine of weekly poker nights with friends, watching football together every weekend, grilling on the back patio, and generally living our best lives without drama. The house felt completely different without the toxic family dynamics. We could actually relax and enjoy ourselves without walking on eggshells or dealing with constant manipulation and guilt trips. Meanwhile, Jessica's life fell apart in the most spectacular fashion possible. Without Brad's fake money or family financial support, she couldn't maintain her expensive lifestyle anymore. Her social media posts went from designer outfits and fancy restaurants to increasingly desperate hints about needing new opportunities and fresh starts. She burned through 3 more wealthy older boyfriends in just 6 months. Turns out when you develop a reputation for being a manipulative gold digger who destroys relationships, word spreads quickly among wealthy men in Phoenix. The older guys with money started avoiding her like she had some contagious disease. Mom and Dad moved into a small apartment across town since they couldn't afford the house payments without Grandpa's support. Dad's construction business struggled significantly without the house as collateral for equipment loans, and Mom had to return to working retail for the first time in over 20 years. They both aged considerably during this period, probably from the stress of facing real consequences for their actions for the first time in decades. But here's where the story gets absolutely delicious and satisfying. Jessica started calling me regularly around Christmas time, clearly desperate and running out of options. First, it was "I miss you so much, and family should always stick together through everything." When that approach didn't work, she tried "I'm genuinely sorry for everything, and I was completely wrong about everything, and I realize that now." I ignored every single call and text message, blocked her on all social media, and refused to engage with her manipulation attempts. Then she started getting truly desperate as her situation deteriorated rapidly. Her apartment was facing foreclosure after she missed several rent payments. Her car got repossessed by the bank after she defaulted on the loan. She was working at some questionable massage parlor just to afford basic food and necessities. The final phone call came on a Tuesday evening that I'll never forget. I was relaxing on the couch with Jake and Grandpa, watching the basketball game, when my phone started ringing with a number I didn't recognize. "Ryan, please listen to me for just 1 minute. I desperately need help. I'm about to become homeless. I'll do absolutely anything you want. I'll apologize sincerely to Grandpa. I'll work for free to make up for everything. I'll sign a legal contract saying I'll never ask for anything again. Please help me." Jake immediately muted the television so he could hear better, clearly recognizing this as the moment we'd been waiting for. Grandpa just raised a curious eyebrow but continued watching. "Where's Brad these days?" I asked casually, already knowing the answer. "Brad's in jail for investment fraud and identity theft. The police arrested him last month." "Please, Ryan, I'm completely desperate. I've learned my lesson the hard way. I know I was horrible to you, and I'm sorry. Just let me move back home, and I'll be the perfect sister forever. I promise." "What about Mom and Dad? Can't they help you?" "They can't help me financially. Dad's business is failing and they're barely making rent on their tiny apartment. They're struggling just as much as I am. You're literally my only hope left in the world." The complete desperation in her voice was absolutely beautiful music to my ears. This was the same person who'd called me selfish for not giving up my condo, who'd stolen from our parents without any guilt, who destroyed my PlayStation out of pure spite and hatred. "You know what, Jessica? You're absolutely right about something. Family should stick together." Her voice brightened immediately with hope and relief. "Really? Oh my goodness, Ryan. Thank you so much. I knew you'd come through for me eventually. I knew you still cared about family." I'm not finished talking yet. Family should stick together, which is exactly why I'm sticking with the family members who actually treat me with genuine respect and love. Long confused silence as her brain processed what I was actually saying. "What do you mean by that? You burned every bridge, sis. You chose a fake rich guy over your own family. You stole from our parents without any guilt or remorse. You destroyed my property out of pure spite and hatred. And now that your consequences have finally caught up with you completely, you want me to bail you out of the mess you created? Ryan, please. I'm begging you. I'm literally desperate. I have nowhere else to turn. The answer is absolutely no. Figure it out yourself. You're a grown woman who made her choices." I hung up immediately and blocked that number permanently. Jake started laughing hysterically. "Bro, that was absolutely ice cold and perfect. She finally got exactly what she deserved. She's tried calling from different numbers 12 more times since then. I don't answer anymore, and I block each new number immediately." Grandpa nodded approvingly with satisfaction. "Sometimes people need to learn that actions have real consequences. You did exactly the right thing, Ryan. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it. What about Mom and Dad? Eventually they made their choice too when they supported her demands. They can live with those consequences as well." Last I heard through mutual acquaintances around town, Jessica was living in some tiny studio apartment with 3 roommates, working 2 minimum wage jobs just to survive day to day. Her social media accounts went completely silent after the massage parlor fired her for showing up late repeatedly. Mom and Dad are struggling financially, but somehow managing in their small apartment. They send polite Christmas cards now, very formal and distant, but they've never apologized or acknowledged what they did.